Hello everyone and welcome to English Banisa. Today we are going to discuss The Brave Potter by Marguerite Siek. This is a folk tale follows a humble potter who becomes a hero through his bravery and resourcefulness. So let's dive into this inspiring tale and see how even the most ordinary individuals can achieve greatness through their actions. But before that, let us know about the author Marguerite Siek. Margaret Sieg is a published author known for her work in children's literature, particularly focusing on folk tales from various Asian countries. Her notable works include collection of stories such as Favorite Stories from Indonesia, Favorite Stories from Burma, and More Favorite Stories from Vietnam. So the characters of this story, The Brave Potter. Here, the main character, the main protagonist of the story is Potter, and next character is Tiger, the first encounter of Potter's bravery, an old lady who complained about the water leakage in her hut. And in this story, we have the king was impressed by Potter's bravery. And last, we have Potter's wife. She helps the Potter in overcoming his fear of riding the horse. Let's see the background of the story. Margaret Say collect many short stories from different Indian languages, and The Brave Potter is one of them. One heavy rainy night, the tiger rested near a hut. There it was shocked by the words of an old woman. In the meanwhile, a potter came there in search of his lost donkey. In the darkness, he mistook the tiger instead of donkey. In the morning, villagers wondered to see the tiger tied to a tree. The news reached the king. Then the king called the potter and asked him to lead his army in the war to protect his kingdom, his country. Af- Then, after some time, because of fear riding a horse, he strongly holds a tree. The opponent's army sees the potter coming with the uprooted tree. All the opponent army escape in fear, and the enemy king begs pardon. Now, let's discuss the story in detail. The brave potter. So, the story in the sky was full of clouds, and it was an old tiger ran into the rain for shelter. Then the tiger saw an old and he crawled under the thatched roof of an old hut and lay down near the door. Now it was an old lady's hut with a leak. When the tiger begins to fall asleep, he heard a woman's voice complaining that the leak in her hut was terrible. And she also complained loudly that she would prefer to meet a tiger rather than have a leak in her house. When the tiger heard her words, he felt that leak must be a dangerous and powerful than him. While these thoughts were running throughout his mind, he fell asleep. Now, here on the afternoon of that day, a potter, the protagonist, had drunk too much. When it started raining, he suddenly remembered that he had left his donkey tied under a tree. When he reached the spot, he found nothing. Then he started looking for the donkey. As he was drunk, he often stumbled over roots and fallen branches, means he lose his balance. So he got angry and wanted to beat the donkey badly when he caught it. Here, the protagonist Potter, while searching, he reached an old woman's hut and mistook the tiger instead of donkey. He could not see the difference between donkey and the tiger because he had drunk alcohol and the night was dark. Then he kicked and beat the sleeping tiger. Now, here the tiger thought that it must be a leak that must have come out of the hut. So the tiger trembled with fear and wanted to follow the leakage. Then the potter jumped on the back of the frightened tiger and took him home and tied him with an iron chain under the tree. Next morning, news spread throughout the village that the potter had captured a tiger and tied it to a tree in his yard. Everyone admired his courage, but the potter couldn't understand how all this happened. When he explained to villagers, they did not believe him, saying that he only brought his donkey home. Then the villagers also praised his decency. A few years later, a war broke out. The enemy army was more powerful, so the king was worried about how he would save his kingdom. He wanted a brave man to lead the army. Then one of his ministers told the king about the brave potter. Then the king called the potter and made him the general of the army, and also ordered him to lead the army in the battle next day. Now here the potter was very worried. He never had a sword, nor had he ever ridden a horse. Then he decided to practice horse riding. So he got up early the next morning and with great difficulty climbed on the back of the horse. He asked his wife to tie his feet with the stirrups. So his wife tied his feet tightly and tied the two stirrups together. She also tied him to the saddle. Suddenly the horse jumped and galloped through the stables. Now here the potter grabbed the horse neck tightly and prayed to all the gods to save his life. And here the horse galloped through streets and the city gates and proceeds towards the enemy's camp. So the potter tried to control the horse, but the horse did not stop. And and as they passed by a young tree, the potter grabbed a branch because of fear, and the tree was uprooted. And when the man from an opponent army saw him holding a tree in one hand and a bridle in the other hand, he thought he must be the cavalry general who grabbed the tiger with his bare hands. Then he immediately shouted aloud, warning his men about the famous tiger general who was running towards them to attack. So the frightened soldiers fled, and opponent king wrote a letter begging for peace and apologizing for attacking on the country. So he left his letter in the tent and jumped on his horse and followed his soldiers. Now here when the potter reached the camp, the horse stopped. With the shaking hands, Potter untied his feet and fell on the ground. And when he looked around, he was surprised to see the camp was empty, and he saw a letter. He brought that letter and gave it to his wife. And he also requested her to take the letter to king and tell him that the enemy had left. So his wife gave the letter to king and the king read it. Then the king praised the potter and rewarded the potter so well that he did not need to work again. So the ordinary potter became a brave potter by luck. However, risks come in all shapes and sizes in our lives, and we often face decisions about whether we should take the risk or not. It's difficult for us to predict what will happen, and it can be hard to work out what the likely benefit of taking certain types of risks might be. So, risk taking is an important part of any endeavor. You can't success without taking risks. Moreover, taking risks is an important aspect of life. Risk taking pushes us to achieve things we never thought we could do, and it makes the world a more challenging and exciting place. And it also allows us to learn and grow in ways that we may not have otherwise. So, this is all for today's video by Marguerite Siek. I hope it would be helpful for you. Stay tuned for more videos and thanks for watching.